Darth Vader had buried Anakin Skywalker beneath years of pain, metal, and obedience. He told himself the past was dead. Padme was dead. The Jedi were dead. Whatever remained was only the Emperor's weapon. Then the memory returned. It happened on Polis Massa, the forgotten medical station where Padme Amidala had died. Vader came hunting a surviving rebel cell hidden in the ruins, but the mission changed the moment his boots touched the cold floor. The air itself felt wrong. Every corridor carried an echo. Every shadow seemed to remember her final breaths. He moved through the broken ward in silence until he found an old holorecorder buried beneath dust and shattered glass. A flicker of blue light rose from it. Then Padme appeared. She was exhausted, frightened, and still beautiful. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the unborn children she would never raise. She spoke of hope. She spoke of Anakin, not Vader. Anakin. She said there was still good in him, even after everything. She said she believed he could come back. The words struck harder than any blade. Vader's breathing turned ragged. Images slammed into him all at once. Tatooine suns, Obi-Wan's hand on his shoulder, Padme smiling on Naboo, the fire of Mustafar, and the lie Palpatine had fed him after the surgery. He had not just lost Padme. He had been broken, reshaped, and chained by the man who claimed to save him. For the first time in decades, Vader fell to one knee, not from injury, but from grief. The rebel survivors watched in fear as the Dark Lord reached for the holo-recording instead of his saber. Beneath the mask, something long buried finally moved. Not rage, not Vader, Anakin. Across the stars, Palpatine felt his perfect servant begin to break free at last. The Emperor sensed it immediately. Something impossible had awakened inside Darth Vader. And before the next mission began, Palpatine would test whether his apprentice was still a weapon or becoming Anakin Skywalker again. Palpatine did not greet Vader with anger. He greeted him with patience. When Vader returned from Polis Massa, a blue hologram waited inside the Executor, cold and still. The Emperor asked if the rebels were dead. Vader said yes, but the answer felt empty. Padme's message would not leave him. Her voice moved with every breath of his respirator. She had spoken of hope, not hate. She had believed there was still good in Anakin Skywalker. That memory cracked the lie holding Darth Vader together. Palpatine sensed the shift at once. He repeated the old story. The Jedi betrayed you. Obi-Wan left you to burn. Padme died because Anakin was weak. For years, those words had turned pain into obedience. Now Vader heard them differently, not as truth, as chains. Because Padme's final voice did not match the Emperor's version of her, she had not cursed Anakin. She had not abandoned him in her heart. If Palpatine had twisted that truth, then he might have twisted everything. Vader began searching sealed imperial records in secret. He found altered medical files from Polis Massa. He found erased witness reports. He found missing pieces around Mustafar that no honest archive should contain. None of it proved everything, but it proved enough. The Emperor had hidden the past from him. And once truth took shape, Vader could no longer mistake loyalty for gratitude or slavery for purpose. Across the Force, Palpatine felt doubt sharpening inside his apprentice. So he acted fast. He sent Vader to the Outer Rim to hunt a Jedi survivor hiding among refugees. Certain bloodshed would bury these thoughts. Vader accepted without protest. But as his shuttle entered hyperspace, he was no longer asking how to destroy the past. He was asking whether Anakin Skywalker had truly died at all. The Emperor believed one more hunt would seal Vader back inside the mask. Instead, he was sending him toward the first choice Anakin Skywalker had made in years. And somewhere in the Outer Rim, a hunted Jedi was about to meet the most dangerous man in the galaxy. Vader's shuttle descended through the ash-filled skies of Artis V, a mining world where thousands of refugees hid in canyon shelters below the imperial drills. The mission was simple on paper. A surviving Jedi healer named Varo Keln had been protecting escaped children and wounded civilians. The Grand Inquisitor wanted an example made of him. Palpatine wanted Vader to watch. The Inquisitors reached the shelters first. Blaster fire echoed through the rock tunnels. Families ran deeper into the dark, while purge troopers dragged prisoners into the open. Varo Keln did not attack like a warrior. He stood at the tunnel mouth, with a blue blade in one hand, and frightened children behind him, buying seconds with every breath. Then, Vader arrived. The Inquisitors expected slaughter. Instead, Vader stood still and watched the Jedi defend lives he could have abandoned. It reminded him of another life, another order, another man he had murdered inside himself. When the third sister moved to strike down a child to break Keln's focus, something inside Vader snapped. His saber came down, but not on the Jedi. One stroke took the Inquisitor across the chest. A second sent purge troopers flying into the canyon wall. The tunnel fell silent, except for Vader's mechanical breathing. Even Varo Keln stared in disbelief. Vader did not explain. He only turned and said, "Take them and go." The Jedi hesitated, sensing conflict, grief, and something almost impossible beneath the armor. Then he gathered the refugees and fled into the lower ravines, while Vader blocked the tunnel alone. Reinforcements poured in. Alarms screamed. The Grand Inquisitor demanded answers over comms. Vader answered with silence and a wall of red light. By the time Imperial bombers reached the ravine mouths, every refugee transport had vanished into the dust, and Darth Vader had chosen treason openly. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader had saved Jedi instead of hunting them. And across the stars, Palpatine felt it clearly, at last. His apprentice was no longer slipping, he was turning. Palpatine did not rage when he felt Vader's betrayal. Rage was for lesser men. Sidious answered with calculation. Within hours of the disaster on Artis V, encrypted orders spread across the Empire. Every Inquisitor was recalled. Every sector command received the same warning. Darth Vader was compromised, unstable, and to be observed. Officially, the Dark Lord was hunting rebels. In truth, the Emperor had begun hunting him. Vader understood the trap almost at once. His flagship received false leads, changing codes, and reports meant to guide him back toward Coruscant under heavy escort. Palpatine wanted him close, contained, and surrounded by loyal guns. But something in Vader had changed with each life he had spared. The mask still breathed for him. The armor still bound him. Yet Anakin Skywalker was now making choices inside it. He altered course. Instead of returning to the capital, Vader vanished into the mid-rim, following rumors that the refugees from Artis V had reached an old supply moon once used by the Jedi. The Emperor expected flight. What he did not expect was purpose. Vader was no longer running from his master. He was trying to stay ahead of him long enough to protect the lives he had already saved. Palpatine answered by unleashing the full weight of fear. The Grand Inquisitor led a strike group. Imperial destroyers sealed nearby lanes. Holonet reports blamed Vader for treason and claimed surviving Jedi had corrupted him. It was a lie built for the Empire's officers, but it carried a deeper truth. Hope was spreading, and Sidious knew hope was far deadlier than any saber. On the frozen moon, Vader found the survivors gathered in a buried hangar, and among them stood a young pilot carrying Obi-Wan Kenobi's saber. The force around the boy felt familiar to him. The Emperor had moved to destroy a traitor. Instead, he had pushed Darth Vader toward the sun he never knew. And with one look across that frozen hangar, Anakin Skywalker's lost future began to breathe again. Luke Skywalker had expected a monster. The black armor, the mechanical breathing, the red blade at Vader's side, every story had prepared him for that. But when Vader entered the buried hangar on the frozen moon, Luke felt something else beneath the fear. Pain. Conflict. A presence in the Force that did not feel empty. It felt wounded. The refugees drew back. Varro Keln reached for his saber. Luke stepped forward first. He held out Obi-Wan's weapon with both hands, not as a threat, but as a memory. Vader stared at the old lightsaber for a long moment. That blue blade had once belonged to his master, his friend, the man he betrayed. Seeing it in Luke's hands opened another crack inside him. Luke spoke carefully. He said Ben Kenobi had told him about Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi Knight, a hero, a father. Vader wanted to deny it. He wanted to bury the name again. But the Force around the boy felt too familiar. Padme's eyes stared back at him through a stranger's face. And when Luke said, "I know there is still good in you," the words hit the same wound Padme's message had opened. For the first time, Vader looked at his own hands and saw not power, but ruin. The armor, the slaughter, the temple, the years spent hunting children, Jedi, and hope itself. He had become the weapon that destroyed the life he once wanted to protect. Luke did not step back. "You were my father before you were Darth Vader," he said. "You can still choose." Then Imperial alarms screamed across the Ice Valley. Star Destroyers dropped from hyperspace overhead. The Grand Inquisitor had found them, and Palpatine was close behind. Vader now faced one impossible choice: save Luke Skywalker or remain the Emperor's monster. For the first time in years, Darth Vader was not being asked to obey. He was being asked to choose who he really was. And with the Empire descending from the sky, that choice could no longer wait. Imperial walkers crushed the frozen ridges around the hidden hangar as TIE fighters screamed overhead. Refugees ran for the transports. Jedi survivors formed a thin defense line. And at the center of it all, Darth Vader stood between his son and the army he once commanded. The Grand Inquisitor marched forward and demanded Vader kneel before the Emperor's will. Vader answered by igniting his saber and cutting the command beacon in half. That single strike changed the battle. Purge troopers froze. Some opened fire on the refugees. Others turned in confusion as Vader cut down the first wave of stormtroopers sent to seize Luke alive. Then Palpatine arrived. His shuttle descended through the snowstorm like a black knife. Sidious stepped onto the ice with no guards at his side because he believed fear would do the work for him. He called Vader a broken machine, a failed apprentice, a creature too weak to embrace the dark side fully. Then he offered one final chance. Kill Luke. Kill the Jedi. Kill Anakin Skywalker forever. Vader looked at Luke. He looked at the refugees behind him, and for the first time since Mustafar, he chose openly, no. The word echoed across the valley. Palpatine attacked at once. Lightning ripped through the ice field, blasting transports apart and throwing soldiers into the snow. Vader met the storm head-on, while Luke and the surviving Jedi pulled civilians toward the last ship. The Inquisitors rushed in next, eager to prove loyalty to the throne. What followed was not a duel. It was an Imperial civil war in miniature. Red blades against red blades, officers against officers, fear against hope. And as Star Destroyers above began turning their guns on each other, the Empire itself split down the middle before anyone could call it back. Vader had finally turned on Sidious in the open. Now, the Empire could never be whole again. And as Luke watched his father battle the Emperor beneath a burning sky, He knew the next choice would decide whether Anakin Skywalker truly returned or died trying. Lightning and fire turned the valley into a nightmare. Luke watched his father stand against the Emperor, red blade raised, armor flashing under white storms. Every strike Vader blocked shook his ruined body. Every step toward Sidious felt like walking through every sin he had ever committed. The dark side still lived inside him. It whispered the old lie. End this with hate. Crush the Emperor. Take his throne. Rule beside your son. For one terrible moment, Anakin nearly listened. When Palpatine hurled Luke across the ice and slammed him beside a burning transport, fury surged through Vader so hard that even the snow around him seemed to melt. He attacked like a storm. Sidious gave ground for the first time in years, but the Emperor was smiling. This was the trap hidden inside the battle. If Vader killed him in rage, then Darth Vader would survive, even if Sidious died. Luke saw it too. Hurt and barely standing, he shouted through the chaos, "Father, don't do this as Vader." The words cut deeper than lightning. Vader stopped. His blade trembled. In that pause, he saw everything at once. Padmé's final hope, Obi-Wan's sorrow, the children he hunted, the worlds he broke, and Luke still calling him father after all of it. He could not erase the monster he had been, but he could refuse to feed it any longer. So, Anakin made a different choice. He did not fight for revenge. He fought to protect. He threw himself between the Emperor and Luke as lightning exploded again. The blast tore through his armor, drove him to his knees, and filled the night with the scream of failing machines. But Luke lived. Through smoke, Palpatine realized with horror that his apprentice no longer drew strength from hate, but from love. The Emperor had felt many kinds of power, but this was the one force he could never control. Now, Anakin Skywalker was rising inside the armor at last. And before the battle ended, Darth Vader himself would have to die. The valley was burning when Anakin Skywalker made his final choice. Vader's armor sparked and failed around him, but the man inside it was clearer than he had been since the night of Mustafar. Luke lay wounded behind the wreckage of a transport. Palpatine stood ahead, furious, pouring lightning into the broken shell he had once called apprentice. For years, that pain would have become rage. This time, it became truth. Anakin rose through the storm, every step tearing more life from the suit that kept him alive. He did not lift his saber to conquer. He lifted it to end the nightmare he had helped build. Sidious struck harder, screaming that Vader was nothing without him, that Anakin Skywalker had died in fire long ago. But Luke forced himself up and answered for him. "No, he's here." Those words broke the last chain. Anakin hurled his ruined saber aside and charged through the lightning with his bare hands. Palpatine tried to pull away, but the grip that seized him was no longer driven by hate. It was driven by sacrifice. With one final cry, Anakin lifted the Emperor high and dragged him into the shattered reactor trench below the command ridge. The explosion lit the frozen sky like a second sun. When the fire faded, the Imperial line collapsed. Some ships fled. Others surrendered. The Inquisitors were dead or broken. The civil war inside the Empire ended in one blinding moment because the Sith had died together. Luke found Anakin at the edge of the crater, armor split open, mask dark, breathing faint and human at last. Father and son finally looked at one another without fear. Anakin smiled, whispered Padmé's name, and died as himself. Above them, dawn broke over the ice, and the Force felt new again. Darth Vader was gone, but Anakin Skywalker had returned just long enough to save his son, destroy the Sith, and change the fate of the galaxy forever. And as the first light spread across the stars, a new age began without fear wearing his face.